Indian summer.
Hi everybody, my name's Darshni and I've got Steph here with me who's going to be my lovely model to demonstrate mehndi on. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I've been doing mehndi since the age of 12. It became like something I would do on friends and family and neighbours, and it then became a career as well. So I've always been into art and creativity, and that's how my mehndi career started. Please do follow me on Instagram on Darshni_MUA for tips and techniques on makeup and also mehndi as well. So what I'm going to do today is go through the basics of mehndi and how to use the applicator to draw basic lines, but also to create a design as well. Mehndi is such a thing where people think it's just a tube, you squeeze it out and your pattern will come out. It's all about the pressure and how to hold the applicator. So you hold it like a pen, and the pressure is according to how thick and thin you want the line. I'd say as a beginner, before you do start on anybody's hand or your own, if you grab a blank piece of paper and just practice fine lines, thicker lines, circles, paisleys and flowers, and then you'll be able to develop patterns and also get the idea of the pressure of the applicator as well. So I will draw a couple of fine lines just for you to have a look at. Okay, so I'm going to show you two vertical and horizontal lines. I'm holding it as a pen. So we're going to do thin lines. When I am drawing a line, the applicator isn't necessarily touching the paper. It's like a millimeter away. So you're going to get more of a smoother line rather than jagged. So they're the fine lines there. And then by having more pressure on the applicator, you can get more of a thicker line. You can ease it off as well, so you can start thick and then go thin, and therefore you'll get more of a tapered line as well. When doing circles, I'd always say have your finger leaning against the paper or the person's hand. Therefore, you'll be able to guide the pattern more, and you're working from your hand and your wrist and not just your fingers. So to do a swirl, I'm just going to hold the applicator a millimeter away with a dot and then just drag that round to create the swirl as large or as small as you want. When doing circles, to keep them the same, again, it's just having your finger as a pivot just to get a bit of something to lean on, and then you can go ahead and just draw your circles. Again, the paper isn't being touched at this point, it's like a millimeter away. You can see the size of my circles increasing there as well. It's the same with a paisley. A lot of people ask me, how do you do a paisley design? I'll teach you the most simplest way to do a paisley. So think of it as a question mark you're starting with first, along with a cat's tail. That's the best way and the cheesiest way to describe it. So I'm going to go and do a cat's tail. So it's a semicircle going into the swirl that I initially taught you. And then a question mark. And that's your paisley design there. So they're the basics. I'd say they're really definitely beneficial to practice with when learning mehndi as well. But it will also help you to develop your pressure points when using the applicator, but also give you the confidence to then go on to somebody's hand or yourself as well. So what I'm going to do now is use the mandala. So I'll talk you briefly about the mandala design. So this is something similar to what I'm going to do on Steph. This is called the mandala. I'm sure you guys have all seen this before. It's really popular this day and age with tattoos as well. So I chose this because it is traditional. It comes from Buddhism and Hinduism. And actually in Sanskrit, the mandala means circle. So it's quite interesting. I actually learned this recently myself, which is really nice. But the history behind it is quite strong. It's spiritual as well. So I chose this design because as well as being in Sanskrit and traditional, it's also used in modern day art and also in tattoos as well. So I thought it would be perfect to demonstrate this. Mehndi has been going on for years in the Hindu tradition as well as Egyptian. There's no history in terms of where it originates from, but it's shown a lot in Arabic and Egyptian art, and as well as Indians as well. I'm speaking from the Indian background, and it's normally used as a method of jewelry on brides and bridal parties as well. So that tradition's carried on till now. So some brides in the olden days wouldn't be able to afford jewelry, so they'd use mehndi or henna as a way of decorating their body. And at this day and age, the tradition still shows, and people are still doing henna or mehndi as a part of their pre-wedding or wedding parties as well. So I'm going to demonstrate the mandala design on Steph now. So the mandala design's normally circular with geometric shapes. So I'm going to start in the center of her top of her hand by drawing a circle. Okay, so with that circle, I'm going to then fill it in. And that's the epicenter or the center of the mandala design. And we'll work outwards to however big or small that you want to do. Around the mandala circle, I'm going to draw some swirls working their way out. Okay. And now I'm going to use semicircle strokes all the way around. With this kind of design, because it is circular, symmetry is quite important. Don't be afraid to take breaks in between each pattern. It doesn't need to be flowing as I am doing it now. So you could just do one or two, step away, and just check that they're all the same size as well. Again, this is about pressure, so I'm keeping this stroke quite fine at the moment, and the stroke in the center, which is the circle, has been more filled in. Therefore, the pressure that I used was a lot more higher. At the moment, it's quite fine pressure to get the finer lines. Okay, so that's the third row done there. So I'm going to now go in with the fourth row, so using the semicircles again, but a little bit larger. You see a lot of these mandala designs on interiors, on fabrics as well, and also on like tiling as well as the tattoos. Okay, so you can see it's slowly getting bigger and bigger, but the pattern's forming as well. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do a larger circle around this and fill that in. So again, you don't need to do the circle in one stroke. You can do a little bit at a time and go back and forth to get the thickness as well, the line. If you find that you want to have varied strokes in your applicator and you have more than one, you can also trim it down. So you can have one applicator as this, which is thinner, and then cut the whole a little bit more to make it thicker as well. Okay, so I've kept that design quite simple, but I've kept the outer line thicker. So what I'm going to do now is fill that in. When the henna actually rubs off, the contrast between thick and thin lines is really visible, and it actually is what makes the design stand out. So I'm just making my way around, being careful of the semicircle pattern there as well, just to make sure that I don't go into that. If you were like me and like colouring in at school, you would definitely enjoy doing this. Okay, so we're going to keep it quite solid and just go all the way around. There we go, so that's coming to the end of that. And you can see there, you can see the detail of the fine lines, the centerpiece there, and then the solid circle which I've just filled in as well. Although it looks quite lumpy at the moment, when it does dry, it will stain the skin fully. So what I'm going to do now, just to break up that solid line, is I'm going to draw a thin line around that. Again, the applicator is not touching the skin. It will feel like tickling. Does it feel like tickling, Steph?
It does, yeah.
Okay, so that's broken up the pattern now. You can see the thick and the thin line contrast. And what I'm going to do now is use that semicircle and the inside that we did previously and just work our way around that thin line. And you can see here I'm using my finger as a guide to balance on Steph's hand here. So it just gives it more of a direction and you feel like you're not going to slip with your line. Although henna does stain, don't get worried about making a small mistake. You can just grab a Q-tip and just wipe it away. As long as it's done within a few seconds, it won't stain the skin. Okay, so we're just carrying on drawing the last few bits of the semicircle. So as I'm pushing out the henna from the applicator, that's when I'm drawing the line. There we go, so that's gone all the way around there. So what I'm going to do now is do the last section of the outer circle before adding the small details. So I always like to start off in these 4 areas here and then fill in the gaps in between, just so I know that they're going to be symmetrical there and they're going to be symmetrical there as well. So I'll draw a swirl there. I'll draw a swirl there as well. And then that one there. And then another one on this side just to finalise that. So you can see there you've got all 4 sides and it's going to look symmetrical when you look at it from a distance, even when the stain's rubbed off as well. So we'll go around the pattern. It's probably a longer process. We're doing it these 4 first and then filling all the way around. But you'll be able to gauge an idea of how many of these patterns you'll be able to squeeze in between the spaces. So it just gives you more of an idea of doing that as well. Also, it looks better as well. There we go. So that's going to be the main ones, and now we're going to fill in the gaps. So I'm approximating that we can get 2 of the same pattern within each gap. So I'll start off either side of the pattern. So we'll go for the swirl. On each side there. And then you may find sometimes that the applicator can get stuck. It's just sometimes the henna leaves haven't been ground down smooth enough or air's got trapped in it. So it's quite normal to grab a tissue and just to squeeze some out, just to get it free flowing again. The last thing you want is a big blob on the skin, so you better to take that precaution when doing the mehndi as well. So you can see here we've got symmetry all the way around, and we'll just finish off by doing the semicircles around each of the swirls. A lot of traditional mehndi designs are created with floral designs and also lots of dot work and paisleys as well. So these are more traditional in the Indian type of pattern. More solid blocks and squares and triangles are more of the Arab culture and Egyptian culture. And then the Pakistani culture tend to do more floral and leaves as well. So there's quite a variation of types of mehndi designs as well. I have included a little small history for you guys to download and look at, and all this information is on there as well, which is quite interesting, when you are doing mehndi and thinking about the history and where it comes from as well. So I did mention briefly, but there's no origin of mehndi, but they say it comes from Egypt and also India as well. So the India, I'd say, is picking up from basically the pattern side of it, and then from the Egyptian it would be more kind of the block designs, and they'd use it as a decorative feature as well. And it is mainly used for the wedding and, like I said, to demonstrate a form of jewelry as well. Another traditional thing about mehndi is in weddings, especially still nowadays, is when a bride's getting married, they always hide the groom's initials in their mehndi design. This is mainly like before, traditionally in Indian tradition, when you get married, you wouldn't necessarily know your husband or your partner in a traditional arranged marriage. So once the bride and groom have had their wedding and they're getting to know each other a little bit, this will be kind of a break the ice feature. So they'd be searching for their initials in the bride's hands. It still continues. I mean, I've been doing mehndi, like I said, for 10-15 years. And I still find brides want to have their groom's initials put in. So I'm glad the tradition's carried forward. Okay, so I'm going to continue with the design, and then I will add the initials into this pattern as well. So you can see now this floral design's working all the way around the mandala, and it's worked its way out but still kept the form of a circular pattern. I'm just going to add the small details now. So these are like the dot work. So we'll add 2 dots over each of the floral design. And when the stain rubs off, these little dots look amazing, and just give it that extra pop to the design. So mehndi usually takes about 2 hours to fully dry. Traditionally, you would keep the design moist so the color develops. So the more moist the pattern is, the more the color will develop. As soon as it dries, the stain pretty much stops developing, although with body heat it does develop over 2 days. So with this design here, it would take approximately 1.5 to 2 hours to fully dry. But in between, just to keep that moisture in, we usually have a mixture of sugar and lemon paste, which is equal parts of sugar and lemon, and it just helps the pattern stay moist and the color to develop as well. Once the design's dry, the best way to keep the heat into the body would be to not use any water, just to scrape the design off and let it develop over 24 to 48 hours. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is use leaf-like designs in between each of the patterns just to finish off. So with that, I'm going to use a lot of pressure just to get a blob out, and then drag it and taper it out into nothing. Same on this side here. And then one in the center. Just there. So we'll do that all the way around. It just adds the extra detail to the pattern as well. So hopefully you can see it all coming together now from a small circle of solid mehndi to a developed pattern. The good thing about mehndi is there's no right or wrong. It is what you like. You can start with a circle and end up into flowers or paisleys or anything. I even get requests for a lot of people wanting to have names or cars drawn or their favorite football team drawn onto their hand when I've done mehndi parties before, especially when men want to get involved as well. They usually want like a partner's name or their favorite football team, or children often want their favorite character like Peppa Pig. So it is for everybody, not just for women as well. So usually the mehndi itself is made from ground henna leaves, and they've been left to develop mixing with either black coffee, eucalyptus oil, clove oil, and it's usually through a muslin cloth. It's sieved several times to get a smooth paste with none of the leaves or particles in it. And that generally the smell of it, I mean, Steph, can you smell that? It's got like a minty eucalyptus smell to it. Which is amazing. So it's all organic as well. So to finish off the design, I'm just going to take a bit onto the top of Steph's hand here and on the center finger and add the initial that Steph wanted as well. So I'm going to give this more of a modern twist by doing some line work here. And then some swirls as well. And then we're going to add the initials now. So I'm going to do an S here, as you wanted. And then the W here, right? It looks easy to spot right now, but once the stain's been removed and the pattern's been removed and the stain's developed, hopefully it won't show up as clearly and you'll be able to have a bit of fun from trying to find it. So this kind of design's more abstract and goes along with the theme of the mandala as well. I'm just going to taper it off with a couple of dots that go to the finger. And then we'll just do the other side as well. We're just going to do something small over here as well. So let's use circular designs. Like that. I'm just going to go into a bit of a heart design here. And we'll just taper it off with some, again working with the pressure in lines as well. So you can see I'm holding on to get a pressured dot and then tapering off into a very fine line. So all these small details like the dots and the lines, when the pattern is fully washed off, they really do stand out and just make it look finished rather than a solid line. There we go, so that's the finished design for you guys. I hope you like it, and if you've got any questions, please do feel free to message me on my Instagram and I'll be happy to reply with all your inquiries. Just a little bit of information about when the mehndi is complete. So once it's fully dry, after you've kept it moist, best thing to do, scrape it off. It will look like a light orange colour, and then over 24 to 48 hours the stain will develop and it will become more like a deep red. And the stain should last on the skin for approximately 1 week to a week and a half. Thank you guys.